Works for the guy for a couple of years.
Everyone please rise. Repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Meeting of Wahoo City Council, Tuesday, September 27th, 2022, 7 o'clock p.m. Open Meetings Act is posted on the wall. There's more information at City Hall if you need to read any deeper. At this point, call the meeting to order and ask for roll call.
Stuart Creechy.
Here.
Carl Warford.
Here.
Patrick Nagel.
Here.
Chris Rappel.
Here.
Ryan Ideas.
Here.
Karen Boone. Here.
Anyone in the audience have items that they want to present that's not on the agenda? Repeat it one more. Anybody have any items they want to talk about or present that's not on the agenda? Okay, we will move forward. Department head reports, go around. Ryan? Nothing? Okay. Grant, come forward, please. Thank you.
Good evening. Grant Anderson, EMS Director for the city. Just want to give a brief update, kind of what's been happening the last couple months since the last time. Total call volume is sitting right around 650 for the year, so we're tracking pretty consistent with what we've had last year, which was our biggest increase through the pandemic. So of that data, about 152 of those are the transfers from Saunders Medical Center out, and just kind of a total volume that I know the city likes to have is still about 1/5, 20% of our volume is showing up outside of the municipal city limits of Wahoo. So we've been busy this fall already with standbys, football, cross country, all that good stuff. Got through fair season. That's been keeping us busy along with our regular call volume. We're actively in the middle of our transition for the new billing company, which was approved at the last meeting. So that's been going well. We're just waiting on a couple of documents to finish that process. And they're going to get hard to work on some of that open accounts receivable for us. I'll let Cody kind of speak to the open house that's coming up that our department obviously will be a part of as well, and we'll invite the public and the council to attend. And lastly, our biggest challenge, like everybody else, continues to be staffing. So we've lost a couple of part-timers that we've trained so hard the last few months on, and unfortunately the workforce is saturated with opportunity. So we're not immune to those issues like everybody else. You might have saw I think the Fremont Tribune had a nice article about Fremont Fire Department going through the same struggles of typically having 100 to 150 applicants, and they were down to a handful. So we're trying to work through that, but other than that, if anybody has any questions for me, I'll wrap my report up. All right. It's going to be an open house for the fire and EMS department we do during our fire prevention week. So Cody will speak to kind of some of the details of the things we have for the public there, and it'll be a good time. So.
Cody? Couple of chairs in the front if anybody wants to.
Good evening, Cody Hall, Fire Chief, City of Wahoo. A couple things to go over with you guys. It's been a little bit since I've got to talk to you all at once, but summer's over now, so. Call volume for the fire department, we're sitting right at 80 runs for service. That is car accidents, fires, weed fires, and that is both City of Wahoo, the rural district, and mutual aid. So pretty busy year so far. A couple items to go through real quick. Fire Prevention Week will kick off on the 9th of October. We will have an open house at the fire station. It's open house to the general public. If they'd like to come and see what we do, look at our equipment that serves the city, they'll have that opportunity. We'll also have vendors there. I shouldn't say vendors, other agencies representing. I've talked to the Wahoo Police Department. I believe they're going to be present. The State Patrol will be there with an exhibit. John Deere's coming down with some farm implementation to show some of the blind spots and things of that sorts of working around large machinery in reference to smaller vehicles and pedestrians, just to give people an idea on what the farmer's looking at when he is actually operating that equipment. So we do have some other things going on as well. Obviously, we do some demonstrations. One of the most notable ones is the grease fire demonstration that Carl so graciously does for us every year. So some other things going on around the city. Just recently, we did burn down the old salt and sand shed. So that property is in the process of being cleaned up. They've already started to clean that corner up south of Crawford Field. And it looks pretty good. So that pile will continue to probably smolder for the next week or two, but we are controlling it with some putting earth on it to kind of cover that scent up. So we will be looking to use the property south of Casey's for some training opportunities as well, the old farmstead that sits south of where the new Casey's is. Still working through some details on that, but probably looking at the end of the year there. A couple other quick things, since I have not talked to you guys here in a while. The generator, I have no report at this time as far as how long it's going to be for that replacement equipment to switch out that gen set on there. It is ordered, but of course, due to constraints on shipping, we're still waiting for quite a few things. That kind of carries over into a lot of the gear that we order on a normal basis, like bunker gear, boots, gloves, tools, things of that sort. We're at anywhere from 12 to 24 months on that type of equipment to get it in, unfortunately. So supply chains on that type of stuff is, because it's such a small market, is kind of under constraints still. So other than that, the next meeting for you guys in your packet, I will have specifications for a new engine. So you guys will be able to see that. And my hope is that after that, we'll be able to move through with some invitations to bid to get some pricing on what a replacement engine would cost. Those of you that don't know, our current engine is 25 years old. In the capital expenditure plan that I have for replacement costs or replacement on larger vehicles like that, we were slotted at that 25 to 30 year mark. Unfortunately, with the amount of time it takes to build some of that stuff, we're looking at 24 to 36 months to get a truck built, so that would put us past that 25 year mark. So in my opinion, it would be in the city's best interest to move forward with that now, just because of the time it takes to get something built, so. Other than that, unless any of you have any questions for me, all right, appreciate your time, thank you.
You.
So I don't have a lot to report to you. I do know on the agenda, the consent agenda is a pay application for the North Highlands subdivision. We had a progress meeting, trying to think, maybe a week ago, is that? Yeah, and we have kind of a timeline that's pretty much agreed upon, and we believe by November 1st, home construction could start in that location off of a generator, and by hopefully December 1st, barring no weather events or unexpected situations, all lots would have power available to them. So I have been working and will be continue to work with their attorney to get that project closed out and move forward with the special assessments and that process. Last night I did attend on the city's behalf the joint public hearing that is required. It was an interesting process, and I did hear some constructive comments from the public. I will leave it at that. I am empathetic of some of the positions that were presented, and also very much I was made aware of how much education needs to take place on the property tax process that happens here in Nebraska. Whether it's county, school, city, the process is not understood by many. And so I think that's, it was really came to light last night. Our 2022 overlay project is pretty much wrapped up. I think there's a few places they have some seating remaining. So we'll be looking forward to, I think we have a punch list, a preliminary punch list. We're going to do a walkthrough with the contractor in the beginning of October, and hopefully get that project closed out by the end of October. You will have the Wilmer Ridge final plat coming before you at the next council meeting. There'll be a public hearing on that, and I know Troy's here. We have been working and will continue to work on the remaining items to present to you at that meeting. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Council, any questions on any of the reports? We won't cover them, so, okay, we'll move forward. The consent agenda. Phyllis has commented on a couple of the points, but any questions on that?
I'm trying to read, how much more do we have on North Highlands? We're a good ways into the numbers. And, for contract, 305. Yeah, 305 is today's bill.
Balance to finish, plus the finish.
Balance to finish is there.
Amount due is 288.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. So we're
no,
done.
balance to finish is the 305,
That's how much work they have left.
yeah.
So we're wrapping up.
But of that, 170,000 is retainage.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call on the consent agenda.
Creachy,
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Hoop. Yes. Warford,
Yes.
Rappel,
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Discussion items not requiring action, there's none. We'll start with some public hearings and associated action items. Number one, hearing on the proposed 1- and 6-year road plan. Is a resolution 2022-18 to approve the 1-year and 6-year road plan.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Steve Parj, I handed out, actually 2 documents for you, the 1- and 6-year plan that shows a location map of potential projects and then also a project listing. And then I handed out a little bigger map, a little easier for at least for me to see, so, yep. So I'll just kind of go, if you want to look at the map, we kind of talked about this before. Up on the north end of town, the North Highlands project, which is nearly completed. We kept that in this next year's one-year plan, so that will be completed out. Project 174, that is the proposed Wilmer Ridge project. That's in the one-year plan. And then if you drop down into, really it's in the downtown area, we've got 7 projects listed, which were actually in last year's plan. That's all in the orange area. That is basically the downtown area and the streets kind of on the perimeter of the downtown area. The exact scope of that project is still to be determined, but it is going to probably be a mill overlay, some curb repair, ADA ramps, probably some inlet construction, reconstruction, and then probably some other things that we haven't been decided on. But that is in the one-year plan, even though it will not happen this next fiscal year, because that's the area where the Department of Utilities will be doing a water project. But we thought we'd put it in the one-year plan because it's probably potentially your next big project to look at doing so. And I've got a breakdown of all those costs for each one of those project areas. And then on the 6-year plan, that's what's in blue. And so we've got 4th Street from Beach to Orange. That's on the south side of the park and the swimming pool. That would be probably be a reconstruction project. We also have Linden Avenue from 1st to 4th. That would be a mill and overlay project. Project 175, that's at the intersection of Walnut and 3rd. That would be a potential reconstruction project of that intersection. And then out on the west side of town, Project 173, that's a potential turn lane, northbound right turn lane onto 15th Street. And that was in last year's plan too, so that's what we've got in the 1 and 6-year plan. Doesn't mean we can't add into the plan next year if there's something that would come up. And everything that's listed here, you're not committed to doing either, but it is one of the requirements. So the city receives its highway allocation money from the state, so. Any questions?
Well, then, one question, you've got the right turn way out there by the airport, is that? not
Okay,
even there
so,
anymore?
I know. So just so you know,
Bypasses.
yeah, the
Yeah, but why is that?
NDOT does these maps that we're supposed to use, and they just don't update them in a timely manner. So, yeah, the expressway, I mean, there's been some streets built in town, but you are getting credit for those on your lane mount. They just haven't updated the maps, so. Yeah, even the expressway isn't on there, but I even double checked to see, and it's like, no, it's not on yet, so.
I will comment, I was gonna comment sometime tonight. Last Friday morning, the Department of Transportation had a public meeting. I was not able to attend that. I had an earlier meeting in Wahoo, but I attended on Zoom. And they laid out their plans for the intersection at 109 to Fremont. They've indicated in that plan, and it was public information, in 2023, they're going to need to do some overlay work and construction repair work on 7792 going east and going north. The Meade corner will be done in 23. In 24, they will be putting in the permanent roundabout. They had a map of it showing it moved to the southeast a little bit. But in talking previous to that meeting, if they go with the roundabout not till for another year, and that they're gonna come out and do some painting of the white stripes in the intersection. We wanna correct that little notch that causes some people some trouble if you're turning right, and other cars can go pull further ahead, you can't see to the west for cars coming from the west going east. So that will be hopefully taken care of. So in '24 will be the roundabout. In 2027, they will start on the 4-lane to the Meade corner. And then following that, the next phase will be from the Meade corner north to Highway 64 or the road to La Shara. And then the third link of it will be finishing up going into Fremont. So that's on their record. It's always subject to change, but at least that's the public information that was provided at that meeting. The total cost, their estimate, and I'm assuming it includes the roundabouts, $117 million for that. So this is not accurate, but it's not up to date even as far as last Friday. Yeah, so.
But those are NDOT projects, and so we don't need to show those on
No,
the cities,
no,
but
it's not gonna.
good information though, that's for
Yeah, it's
sure.
not gonna affect anything, but since the
Right.
question was brought up about the right turn, I'd like to throw that in. So. Okay, open up the public meeting, public hearing. Any comments from the public on the 1 and 6 year road plan? I'll ask one more time, any comments from the public in the public hearing on the 1 and 6 year road plan? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll second that.
Motion been made, seconded, to close the public hearing. Roll call.
Warford.
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Creachy.
Yes.
Boop. Yes. Nagel.
Yes.
We have a resolution to approve, for that plan. It's the council's pleasure.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the 1 and 6 year plan. Any other comments or discussion from the council? Seeing none, roll call.
Creachy.
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Warford.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Boop. Yes.
The second hearing on application for a conditional use permit to collate T-Mobile antennas and equipment on existing US cellular tower located in the southeast half of the southwest quarter and the southeast quarter of the northwest quarter. Section 32, Township 15, Range 7 East, Saunders County, commonly known as 1850 County Road L, as filed by T-Mobile. Consideration of an ordinance to provide for requested conditional use permit.
So I have a representative from T-Mobile on my phone who's not able to attend, but if you have any comments that you would like to share with the council, now would be your time.
Okay, yeah, hi, my name is Gary Buster. I work for KGI Wireless, and we are asking for approval to co-locate on this existing tower. We would be going on an existing compound where there is an equipment shelter that will be removed. And so we're using existing infrastructure, and this would definitely help our service in the area. So we're asking for approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Anybody have any comments from the public on this application? Conditional use permit. I'll ask again, anybody in the public have any comments on this application? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to close.
Second.
Second? Roll call on the motion to close public hearing.
Creachy,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Ideas,
Yes.
Boop. Yes. Warford,
Yes.
Raffle.
Yes.
Okay, is this a
It's an ordinance.
ordinance?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Introduce ordinance,
Motion to introduce the ordinance. I'll
Okay.
second that.
second that. Is there a motion to waive the three readings?
So moved. Second.
Okay, roll call on the motion to waive the three readings?
Creachy,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Boop. Yes. Ideas,
Yes.
Raffle,
Abstain.
Warford.
Abstain.
Okay, we do have four, that's not a majority, super.
Right. But can you?
Yeah, he can make the supermajority.
I can make this, okay, I'll vote yes. I didn't know if I could fill in that spot. Okay, so we waive the three readings, so we'll do the final reading, roll call.
Creachy,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Ideas,
Yes.
Raffle,
Abstain.
Warford,
Abstain.
Boop. Yes.
Aaron, yes. Okay,
Okay, that's complete, and we'll be in touch tomorrow.
now, we're gonna be working on two hearings, and they kind of tie together. So here's the process we're gonna be using, for this, these two public hearings. I'll read through both titles and both of the proposals on, number 3 and number 4. The hearing notices will be read together. Then I'll ask the, developer to refresh our memories on both of the topics. First, focusing on the one related to residential apartments on the first or ground level. Then, on the second hearing, allowing the developer to, as far as counting parking stalls within the city right-of-way, towards the required number of parking stalls for the proposed apartments. These two will be read together. At that point, we have a letter to be read into the record, and we will hear from city staff members dealing with the, from the city standpoint. Then I will open up the public hearing. First of all, we'll go through item number, or public hearing number 3, and I ask you to keep your comments related to that subject. We'll have a time for the subject on the parking later in the day, but will not vote on either one of them until we've heard the whole package, number 3 and number 4. When you do come forward, because there's a lot of testimony, or people probably giving testimony, a piece of paper on the podium, if you would sign in, name and address. Take a little bit longer, but we, for a public hearing, with a number of people, we do need to have that recorded. So, then we'll do the first public hearing. I won't close the hearing, but we'll move to number 4, dealing with the parking situation. We'll do the same process there. Following that, we can go back and discuss both hearings, both projects, and then we will close the public hearings. The council will then begin discussion. Council members can ask the developer any question or ask any of the public to comment on theirs if the council wishes. There will not be any more from the public unless somebody asks you a question. At that point, the council will discuss it, discuss any proposals that we might have, and then we will vote on the two hearings separate. So hopefully that pretty well follows a order that we'll be able to work separately on these two agenda items, but we'll be able to work together as we put the whole package together before we close the meeting. So with that, I'll open up the, gotta read what I said I was gonna do. We'll open up the hearing for number 3. Is that when you want to read in, or?
Actually, you were gonna have him do a presentation
Okay,
before opening.
okay, go ahead and open on yours, yes.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Sullivan. I represent Lincoln Star Investment Group.
Sure.
I better move too, so everybody can.
I'll just get started briefly, and then I'll show my slides to invite and describe the project a little bit more. But this project is based on 5th Street and Beach Street, as well as 4th Street. So right across the street from Smith Park, right to the north of the Senior Center and Civic Center. This is the old vacated Wahoo Supers. So again, this is for the Wahoo Urban Apartment Development that I am representing as the developer and the team representing Lincoln Star Investment. Like I said, my name is Mike Sullivan. I grew up in Wahoo, grew up framing houses and doing finished carpentry for Tim Molly here in Wahoo. Graduate from Bishop Newman, graduated in 2002. Went on to get my master's in architecture, University of Colorado, Denver. Before that, I got my bachelor's degree in environmental design, University of Colorado Boulder. Prior to what I'm doing now as a developer, I was an asset manager of multifamily, Class B and Class C, all throughout the U.S., but mostly in the Midwest, in the Rust Belt, so Kentucky, Ohio, and then also Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota. My investment strategy is cradle to grave, commercial real estate, start to finish, and I am a commercial real estate developer that I like to focus on apartments in the Midwest, specifically within 100 miles of where we're at today. This is the project that I'm introducing. Like I said, the old Wahoo Supers that has been vacated for 3 to 4 years. It's in a great location, located on 5th Street and Beach Street. It's quite large, I understand. It has 58 parking stalls currently on it, and the lot itself is just over an acre and a quarter, just around an acre and a quarter. What I'm here to do today is introduce this project and why I want to do this project. I believe that commercial real estate should have a nice, should be well designed. There should be an acceptable amount of residential and commercial within an urban core project. To do that, I think there should be a great connection to the streetscape and local amenities. This will promote growth for local businesses and the population. This will also improve sustainability for the community, and it will fill the need of the housing shortage that we have here in Wahoo and throughout the nation. I'm sure you've heard some buzzwords the last couple of years, but we're all in a housing shortage, no matter the size of the town. I believe cities rely on commercial and residential growth for the health and continued existence. Marrying these efforts to the community's character is the key to successful growth. For connection, like I said, this property is in a great downtown location across the street from Smith Park, across the street from the senior center, not too far from Wahoo Water Center. Sam Crawford baseball field is just down the street. It's very close to restaurants, bars, hair salons, cafe across the street, real estate and insurance agents. Everything is walkable from this location. And that's just within view. I mean, you can walk up the street to get here as well. Growth. To revitalize the downtown urban core through community-focused improvements, I think is very critical. What I want to see in our growth is to remove blighted and underutilized areas through well-designed development and redevelopment. I want to help attract business downtown for the local community. I believe we can do this by creating livable spaces downtown that will allow additional and easier access to local commerce and amenities. And I believe that if we let growth happen, we should let growth happen where it can. Sustainability. We hope to help quarterback and facilitate well-designed development throughout the city and in city improvements through this project. We would like to welcome new businesses, encourage them to establish their own ventures. We'd like to bring more people to participate and live in the downtown area and support local businesses. This will help improve neighborhoods, help provide housing opportunities for underutilized areas, attract and facilitate living arrangements for all ages. I think this is very critical, and family sizes, and promote the fruits and excitement of the Wahoo community. The need. This is done from, actually JEO had a study a few years ago that they published. This is a few kind of quick snippets from data released in that report. 2014 study, to achieve a healthy and sustainable vacancy rate of 10%, Wahoo would have needed to build 60 units at that time. To my knowledge, we haven't built 60 rental units since then. So Wahoo has grown 14% within 14 years. Based on this data, Wahoo is in dire need of additional units, both single family to own and rental units. To my knowledge, 2017 was the last new apartment that was built here. New buildings and rental housing inventory has not been able to keep up with growth, meaning if there is more, it would get filled rather quickly. Again, stating to the vacancy, Wahoo is close to a 0% vacancy right now. I know a lot of property owners are full, which is great. A healthy vacancy, in my opinion, is 10%. Some would argue maybe 5%, but right now Wahoo's at around 0%, which is great for Wahoo, but there's not availability for more people to move here. An array of rentals in the Wahoo area are in need of repairs and improvements, and in this report they state some solutions on how to do that through grants and other funds that can help this out. As Omaha and Licking continue to grow towards Wahoo, the highway's been great. You know, the JDO's intersection from the NDOT comments were great. I think Wahoo will continue to be a great connection to these two cities, which will help Wahoo grow even more. And I hope it's a healthy growth. So we're here to help solve these complex problems with innovative solutions. And we want to be a part of the community. We want to cater to the look, the feel, the size of what is present in the close proximity to our property. As everyone knows, or most people know in this room, you know, this is the four corners of the main road here in Wahoo. And predominant architecture as well. To speak to that architecture, we would like to pull, you know, aspects from the building. Sorry, this is tough to see on screen, apologize. But this gives a basic cadence of what to expect and that we aim for in the design of our building. Again, catering to the local architecture that's already here in existence and pulling out the geometries, the materials, and the size. So the slide on the right shows a 3-story building. The silhouette to the right is the bank that's directly next to the property, and then so on going west down 5th Street is the silhouette of additional buildings heading west. and facing south. And that's where we'll stop until the next discussion of parking.
Is that how you want to handle that, Jerry?
Yeah, let's move on, and then let's go on to parking, and then I'll read the ordinance, and then we'll, get reports from staff. So, you wanna go on the second?
Okay, yeah, and just to be clear, both are completely separate to the discussion. So parking, huge issue in Wahoo. I understand, I hear it. Currently, as the grocery store sits, there's 58 stalls on the property. They're not well lined out, but they're there. To the best of my knowledge, to the west side on Beach Street, there's 11 parallel stalls on the west side of Beach Street. And to the north side of 4th Street, which is south of the property, there's 0 stalls, it's grass. So it's the south side of the property, north side of 4th Street. What I'm proposing in this project is adding 10 stalls to the existing 58 on property. On the west side of Beach Street, we will add 13 more stalls, but they'll be designed as a diagonal stall to accompany more parking. Diagonal and 90-degree parking can fit more cars versus parallel parking. And then to the north side of 4th Street, just south, on the south end of the property, we are proposing doing 19 diagonal stalls. That in total, for the property and for Beach Street and for 5th Street, on and touching the property will give us 111 total stalls. This is 42 stalls in addition to what's already there for the downtown area and City Park area. This is, again, right across the street from Smith Park, right to the north of the Senior Center, and on property. So that's the kind of basic math up front. Oh, shoot. So 1 second, I'm sorry, I goofed this up. Sorry. Okay. We'll go with it. Okay. All right, so I think land development is essential for community success. While development can sometimes be frowned upon, as it changes the face of the landscape, creates more traffic, changes the ecosystem and habitats, it is imperative for the prosperity of the community. The importance of apartments on the first floor, I'm glad we're doing both these together, so sorry I got mixed up, apologize. The opportunity to host livable units on Beach Street across from Smith Park in the Senior Center will open the potential for the downtown community through personal interactions, unity, and commerce. I can just imagine kids going across the street to Smith Park with ease. I can imagine senior citizens going to the Senior Center and the Civic Center with ease if apartments are allowed on the first floor. I think this will have a positive impact for more residents to use the public spaces, shop in the retail, and dine in local restaurants and bars. Living downtown will be an incentive for residents to walk more and drive less, creating safe and accessible mobility. I think zero entry units are very important. This will allow that, which will allow seniors to move around easier around downtown the community, especially the civic center and senior centers located directly to the south. There are some precedents that I like to talk about. One's here in Wahoo. There's a single-family home in downtown Wahoo, which is livable space on the first floor in C1 zoning. Also in Ralston, small town, downtown, just finished a project with apartments on the first floor. Doesn't look like apartments on the first floor, but the first floor has commercial windows. It has the appearance that it's a commercial space, but it's actually well-designed, well put together, apartments on the first floor. And it's a 36-unit community in downtown Ralston, right across the street from the fire station, down the street from cafes. Very similar to Wahoo, with similar zoning districts. And this was just recently completed by a developer in Omaha. This is the site, just to give a kind of bird's eye view of what we're looking at and the parking arrangements. Sorry, it's a little tough to see. I believe a city's strength is based upon the structure, stability, and the economic drivers in its urban core. And that's all I have to say and show you guys today. Thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Okay, for the benefit of those on the line, we'll read the information regarding the public hearings. Public hearing number 3, hearing application for conditional use permit to allow for residential apartments on the first or ground floor in the C1 downtown commercial zoning district on property described as lots 1 through 4, parts of lots 5 through 8, and all of the lots 9 through 12, block 155, county addition to Wahoo, and part of the vacated alley as filed by Mike Sullivan, Lincolnshire Investments, and a consideration of ordinance to provide for requested conditional permit. That's number 3. Number 4, hearing on a application for a conditional use permit to allow property owner to count parking stalls within the city right-of-way towards the required number of parking stalls for proposed apartments on property described as those same as I listed before, and part of the alley as filed by Mike Sullivan, Lincolnshire Investments, and in consideration of an ordinance to provide for the requested conditional permit. So that we have the preparation for the hearings. Before I open up the hearings, I think it's important that we hear from our city staff members as to see how they see this project moving or not moving forward. Who's first?
So I guess I don't have a lot to say, but I do know that there has been lots of lively conversation around this project. And I know that you'll have a decision before you tonight that is not an easy one to make. But that being said, I think the point that Mr. Sullivan brought up about the need for housing, that's something that we have heard over and over and over again. And it is something that I think there is an additional housing study that's currently being done. And when I spoke to the individuals working on that they ask if there is a housing need, and I was actually received a laugh in return, like that. It's a no-brainer. It's absolutely a need here in town. We experience here, even with the city, as we bring on new employees, and I hear this from other businesses in town as well, that we can hire individuals or we can bring people to the table, but if there's no place for them to live, it's impossible for them to hold a job here. Some don't even apply because they know that housing is not an option. And I think you have probably heard that from other businesses as well. I think it's important for you to keep in mind that there are things that Mr. Sullivan can do without coming to you for permission that are simply allowed by C1 zoning regulations. And I think that in the conversations that we have had with city staff-wise with him, he does have a genuine interest in advancing Wahoo, in providing housing, and I would say is willing to sit and have conversations about ways that we can make it a win for them, a win for the city, and win for our businesses in town as well. So, as a member of the staff, that's all I have to say. Would you like me to read this letter at this point,
Yes, if you
or?
would.
Okay. So I did receive a letter from the Greater Wahoo Development Foundation, which I didn't have any part in preparing, but it says, "Dear City Council members, this letter is to be provided to you on behalf of the Board of Directors for the Greater Wahoo Development Foundation, a Nebraska nonprofit corporation formed in 1988. The longstanding mission of the foundation is to promote the positive image of the Wahoo area and to encourage and facilitate new businesses and business expansion. In keeping with this mission, the board would like to express its support of the developer's proposed project at 247 East Fifth Street, as this is an important residential and commercial cross-section of the east downtown area, and that a project appears to attempt to address both of these needs. In support of this project, the board would like to advise the City Council that it surveyed its 55 members regarding their desire to either support, oppose, or remain neutral as to the proposed project. Those survey results made clear that the membership group supports rather than opposes the project. That being said, the board understands that it does not have expertise with respect to how the project might affect the city's existing utility infrastructure, off-street parking plans, traffic flow, etc., and thus would of course defer to city staff and the council relative to these issues. It is the board's hope that if there are such concerns, that the city would be able to work with the developer in coming up with practical solutions that are mutually beneficial to the city, its citizens, and the developer. Finally, the board would like to commend city staff and the council for its long-standing efforts in supporting business expansion and commercial development in the Wahoo area. Sincerely, Greater Wahoo Development Foundation Board of Directors."
Thank you.
Yep.
Ryan, from the utility side, or your own personal thoughts as a staff member?
As General Manager of Utilities, Honorable Mayor Johnson, and the members of the council, as General Manager of Wahoo Utilities, I'd like to voice my support for the project. There are many reasons to support such a project for Wahoo. The direct impacts on the utilities department is one positive impact due to the density of utility usage. We could serve this property with existing utilities with obvious upgrades due to, transformers and that sort of thing to improve the electrical usage. If this was compared directly to other housing developments we're working on in Wahoo, for example, North Highlands, it is a comparable amount of service connections if you were to look at the amount of single-family homes compared to this one unit. And our cost for infrastructure upgrades is a fraction of what we needed to invest for North Highlands. New single-family homes will use more power, obviously, than an apartment, but they're only paying one customer charge per home. And this is measured, this is a better measure of a return on investment. If we take into consideration if it's 61 or however many units it is, that's how many meter sockets will hang on this building, and that's how much return on investment. And that is shared revenue for all of us as customers of Wahoo Utilities. So again, the energy usage is variable, and then we have to take into consideration the margin difference. Also, the return on investment, because of its ability to fill and be constructed, I would assume we're gonna see many more units filled in a much shorter amount of time than we would with a single-family housing development. That's not to say I'm opposed. I'm very supportive. Wahoo Utilities is very supportive of single-family housing developments and will continue to take that consideration. The Board of Public Works has set policies on how we would handle these developments. But I think that this is a good project for Wahoo Utilities because we already have the existing infrastructure available to serve it without having to build out a whole new section of town. Some concern has been brought up on the condition of the sanitary sewer systems. As you will recall, we hired Johnson Services with the Utilities Department. You might have saw their trucks, around town cleaning sewers. Their jobs were to clean and inspect our sewer systems, give us really good detailed reports and video inspections of those sewers. And this section of Maine was cleaned and inspected in 2022. And we do
have identified, even prior to this project, the need for some investment into those existing sewers. But regardless of this project moving forward or not, we're planning to move forward with those repairs. And so there really is no concern for us on our sanitary sewer infrastructure's availability to serve it. In fact, I think one benefit of having another large user in this part of town is that portion of the sewer rates will be increased, and we'll have availability for someone else to be helping contribute to those added infrastructure improvements that we need to make throughout all of our infrastructure throughout town. Another part I'd like to add on to what Melissa said, and just add to the us as an employer, Wahoo Utilities, we have employees, especially in our line department, where we'll have younger gentlemen come and work for us, and a lot of times they tend to spend a few years with us and then move on to some other utilities, or they might stay here permanently. But we've had a real struggle with being able to find adequate housing for them, affordable housing. And so not only do I think that this is an option for those maybe to increase the availability of housing, maybe not even just at this location, but this location freeing up maybe some availability in other locations throughout town, and support our other existing landowners and property owners that do a great job of providing places for people to live in town and are great customers of Wahoo Utilities. But I think adding the availability and increases our capacity for those individuals to come to our community and have affordable housing. I think that helps us as an employer in Wahoo, at Wahoo Utilities. So thank you for the time. If you have any questions, be glad to take them.
Okay, one staff member that's is critical of this discussion, and that's Travis Beavers, who's not able to be here tonight, excused absence. I would report that the planning and zoning in both situations did not probably feel that they had enough information to approve it because of these things that we're talking about tonight. So they probably made the right decision based on their authority and based on the information they had. So now it's up to the public and up to the council to see if we can find a common denominator in order for the project to move forward. So again, I'm not saying they did anything wrong, or they were right in what they did with the information they had. So with that in mind, I'm going to open up the public hearing on the number 3, which deals with the residential apartments on the first or ground floor. So we want to stay to that subject, and then when we get all the questions answered or all the presentations made, then we'll move to the second part, because these two are critical to work together. And then again, we'll come back and discuss them again separately, and we'll vote at that point. So as I said before, write your name down and your address if you would. And so public hearing on number 3 is open, so we're ready for public input.
I'm Jerry Wagner. I live at 411 East 4th, Wahoo, Nebraska, right down the road from there. Question for the utility department. What size of sewer is running that thing's gonna tie into? You got 67 units going into there. So what size of the?
12-inch.
12-inch, and that's capable of handling existing stuff. What kind of fixture units are you using on that to get that? My background is 20 years as a plumber in Omaha, Nebraska, and done a lot of buildings and put a lot of sewers in. And I'm just doing if I do the fixture unit count, it doesn't relate to 12 inches is gonna handle all that kind of sewer. I might be wrong, and we got problems with the sewer and low spots, and which sewer line is it gonna attach to? Is it one down on 4th Street, down on Elm that goes out to or is it a different one?
Yeah, it's the one that it'll tie into through Smith Park, and it'll tie into Elm Street.
It does go on Elm, because Elm Street down on that corner down there on 1st Street is half full of sewer all the time in that manhole. I know that for a fact, because I tied in there before.
Right.
So there's an issue right there, I guarantee there's an issue right there.
And there has not been any, designs or any, we've completed a sanitary sewer, master plan with JEO in 2020. And when we looked at our flow and sizing of our existing infrastructure, that was not an issue that was brought up in this area, that we had inadequate sizing or capacity.
Okay, so my calculation there is, I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I don't have the engineer design or the label, whatever, but I got practical experience, and I've been around it a long time, so.
Again, the average person, they say, per person is 100 gallons per day. That's the population equivalent used through all of design. 100 gallons per day per person. Sounds like a lot of water, but it really isn't a sanitary sewer.
But that's the new, you got 70 units coming into that, and that plus whatever is out there already that's on the existing system already. And I know for a fact, I can take you down to that manhole and I can pull that lid off there and it's half full right now, and I don't think it's 12 inch down there in Elm Street. I might be wrong on that, but I don't think it's 12 inch going through that, to that sewer out there.
It is 12 inch going south.
Okay, so that was down in there, and it didn't look like a 12 inch. I put an 8 inch into it. And my pipe was bigger than what was there, so. And, the water. Where's the water? What side of the main we got coming into it? What kind of infrastructure we got right now? Cause I know there's another water main leak on First Street down there. That needs to get fixed. What, are we gonna upgrade all the water services in and?
Yep, and
throughout the
it's been
system here?
presented in the past, but we are in process near completion of design of nearly 30 blocks of water main replacement, most of that in the downtown area. Earlier it was presented, the 1 and 6 year plan. Almost all the area where downtown used streets are gonna be will be replacement of water mains. Currently you saw from 12th, or from 11th to 7th Street, new 8 inch water main that was installed. That will continue from 7th to 1st Street down Linden, along with new water main going directly in front of this location from Beach Street all the way to, on 5th, all the way over to Chestnut will be new water main. So definitely agree with you, there is a need for investment in our downtown water infrastructure, and we are waiting for the state of Nebraska's SRF funding guidance. We're hoping to get a 2% loan, 35% loan forgiveness. So it's a great opportunity, one that we've never seen before, and one that we'll maybe never see again, to replace a lot of these water mains in town. So I don't disagree with you at all. I think that's a glaring need is water infrastructure investment in Wilmington.
And the other question I got is storm sewer water. You got these buildings, can you put that slide back up?
Sure.
You got the storm sewer, I don't know where all this water is gonna come off these buildings, and right now, everybody says there's a building there, it doesn't matter, it's already paved and everything, but when you start directing water, it's gonna go somewhere. You can make it go 5th Street or 4th Street. 4th Street's got a problem. It blows the manhole, covers it up when it's just a regular rain right now. So if we're gonna dump all that water from, I don't know how they're gonna do the storm sewer on these buildings, cause you got 2 buildings on there, correct, or 3?
2.
So you got 2 big buildings there, and the square footage of that building, where's that storm water gonna go? Are we gonna pipe it over to 5th Street, or are you gonna dump it down to 4th Street? I mean, there are 2 options there.
Again, that would be part of the design. I mean, right now, this hasn't had final design, but yeah, we will make it go to a place. And the problems with existing infrastructure, right, no matter what goes in that location, those are gonna have to be dealt with. So you bring up the issue of the sanitary sewer and flows. Yet we identified there's some problems with the existing infrastructure. Whether this happens or not, those problems don't go away. They need to be dealt with.
Right, I mean.
And this is a location in downtown that no matter what could go down there could be somebody that could come in and set up any sort of a facility. We have a requirement to serve as a utility, and so we have to take into those considerations that any kind of a modification in a commercial district is gonna potentially have impacts on our existing infrastructure.
And that's fine, as long as the storm sewer water, I don't know if that pertains to you guys or not, but the storm sewer is not big enough to handle that pressure right now. And I see on your 1 and 6 year plan, you got it, in the 6 year plan, that it's gonna be addressed. But this thing is gonna be up and running. And when you're living down at the bottom of the hill, guess where all the water goes?
Again, I think that any new construction has to take into consideration the addition of any sort of storm sewer, and they'd have to mitigate, just like we've seen in any new development, like we've seen with North Islands, JEO's property, any of those that have been built, they have to take into consideration the addition of storm sewer, and this actually gives us an opportunity to redirect that stormwater. If we think it is a problem on 4th Street, maybe we redirect it to 5th Street, so we
What
have.
about putting a containment system in? They do that in Omaha now all the time for stormwater. You contain it.
I guess I would say that if this project gets to the point where it is designed and there is engineering, there is requirements for any commercial construction to provide a drainage study.
But
Right.
I for sure don't wanna have all the water run down 4th Street.
Understand that.
Already got enough
Like
trouble
you
with
said,
it.
whatever goes in there, hopefully someday, maybe this,
Yep.
it's gotta be looked at. But we know there's issues underground, and we're addressing those thanks to Ryan and his team.
Right, and like I say, I like to make sure the sewer stuff's upgraded before there's an issue, before you start backing up in everybody else's property, all the way back down this line, is what I'm concerned about, so. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I could, Jerry, one thing I want to make sure I clarify just to the general group, so everybody understands. For purposes of today, when we're talking a conditional use permit, we're talking about simply the residential first floor ground apartments, and we're talking about the parking requirements. One thing that the city council will never have in front of you is approval of the project generally. Because the project, it doesn't require rezoning, it doesn't require council approval to put an apartment complex or commercial buildings there. That's all things that they can do regardless of what happens today. They have the absolute right to do that. Just like if someone wants to renovate their house, as long as they meet the building code requirements and they meet our code requirements, they can do it, even if it means the city has to put money into infrastructure, even if it means that potentially the neighbor doesn't like it or something like that. That's not something that we can kill a project on that basis. We're dealing strictly with the issue, not the project as a whole, but the issue of the ground floor apartments and the issue of the parking requirements. And I just want to make sure the public understands that, because there's probably a misnomer that we're talking about approval of the project. We're not talking about approval of the project. That can happen no matter what.
Okay.
We can't kill that as part of this process.
On that note, then, what's the ordinance right now for commercial property downtown? Can they have apartments on the first floor?
No.
Besides, I know they got that one over there by the wheelhouse, there's an
Yeah.
apartment there, they got apartments.
They can only have it if the council approves it through a conditional use permit. Otherwise, they have to have commercial structures on the first floor.
Right.
Adjacent.
Yeah.
Adjacent to residential.
Yeah.
And apartments above, that's not a big deal, we can't
Yeah,
have.
they can do apartments above,
Yeah,
that's allowed without any approvals.
But then you knock down the number of apartments and then your flow,
Yeah.
everything else is slowed down.
Absolutely.
Just- I don't know how many bathrooms Super Savers got in or whatever that grocery store, but probably one or two.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of water flow going through there right now.
Yeah, and I'm not certainly suggesting pro or against the project or otherwise. I just want to make sure everybody understands we're not talking about approving the project as a whole or their ability to buy the space, their ability to construct apartments there, their ability to put commercial units, because they can do all of that.
Right.
There's just a couple limitations the city can impose upon that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next comment.
All right, my name down. I'm Sandra Sullivan, and I have lived in Wahoo, but I am a resident of Saunders County. Lived in Wahoo for 4 years, and now I'm just right outside of Wahoo. I'd like to address some things. First of all, I think it's important to have these meetings. You need the pros and cons because that moves you forward. And that's what I see happening right now. And my hope and prayer is that it does keep moving forward. I see that the developer, who I am related to, I think everybody knows, has worked diligently on trying to take in those concerns and implement them in the project. Parking, ground level apartments, the look of everything downtown. We moved here in 1996 in January, believe it or not. it's been 6 years ago. And I was comparing with one of my sons, how many times he moved, not this son, and how many times I've moved since college. I beat him 12 times. Every time I've moved, with or without kids, I've looked for a park to be near, convenience of where I'm at, and churches. Those were all important to me. And as I look at this project, and we're talking about ground level apartments right now, and I have talked to some people who live in the community who are ready to, they're elderly, and they're ready to sell their houses and get to a place of convenience. And if you look at, again, where this project is at, across from the senior center, within walking to get groceries, because there are groceries at Dollar General, within walking to church communities, whichever faith they have. I think in my age or elderly, I think that's so important. Where's the church? Can I get to it readily? Do I have to depend on somebody to get me there? Or can I just get there on my own when I want to go have quiet time? Do I want to go to the park on a sunny day and just not under a tree, just find some sun somewhere and just be quiet? Do I want to go to the park in the summertime and listen to children play at the pool? I love it when I hear, my kids are grown. I love it when I hear the voices of little kids. So there's an element of humanness in what I want to get across, that we're all human. We all need each other. When I moved here in 1996, I knew no one, absolutely no one. But I knew I felt and I knew there was a good community here. I didn't know how good though. I had no idea that people that opened up their arms to me and my 5 kids, I was overwhelmed with the kindness of this community. So I also understand when you're born and raised in a place, sometimes you don't see that. But I see it, and people who come to this community see it. This is an awesome community, and I'm very thankful that my sons want to come back and make it an even better community. We're not talking about low-income housing either. This is all-income housing. These are people who want to be here and who we can welcome into the community. I think that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll finish my address.
Again, we want to focus on the pros and cons of first floor apartments, because that's where the issue or the question comes in as far as the conditional use for that purpose. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Hank Weiss. I'm the prior owner of the prior Wahoo Super. And nobody would have liked to see more retail developed in that area than I would have. I believe we all understood what happened during COVID. When it struck, I had 7 people looking at that facility at that moment, bidding it up. I would like to have been able to retire with that. But as soon as COVID hit, the brick and mortar shut down. It was over. And I went from 7 people really interested in it to 0. As far as another grocery outlet there won't be one. I did sign with Spartan Nash a restricted use on that land. Okay, that made it very feasible for us to close the store, which I needed to do at that time due to my accident. Okay, so they could have that restricted use from now till eternity if they continue to want to pay me. But I always said, and Stuart, I believe you heard me over at the bank say, I wanted to do what was right for Wahoo. I wanted to limit. I wasn't going to let Shakers buy my building and go in there or anything like that. And so a mixed use unit allowing first floor apartments will be something that really helps out Wahoo. There is not place for apartments or as much needed as there is today. Another grocery store in town will be hard. I had one of the guys looking at it was the B&R Group, and they are in the mode of buying smaller stores in smaller towns, but it did not fit for them to buy one in Wahoo because they were too close to Lincoln. So it made no sense for them. Their last group, they just bought a group of 12 stores in Missouri. So to get brick and mortar retailers in there in a store that size was not going to happen. The mix, it just wasn't ever going to fill it up and make it where it would be any return on investment on my side of it. So Mike came to me, had a great idea, presented the whole thing to me, and I thought it's fantastic. I think it's something Wahoo needs. And like I say, if somebody could have helped me out, it was sat there for sale for quite a while. And I talked to the guys that helped develop Blackstone area in Omaha and asked them, you know, hey, how do you get this to work in a downtown center? He said, you don't have enough population base, you need bars, restaurants, and all those things, not so much retail stores. He said, we'll survive on bars, restaurants, and gathering places. So that wasn't gonna work. That's really all I have to say about it. I think it's a great idea. I'm not just saying that because I'd like to sell the place, you know, but I think it's gonna be hope of having something retail-wise down in that section of town is not going to happen. The other part is they're all waiting. Any other small retailers I talked to said, well, when's the first Super Walmart going out on the bypass? Because that'll be the end of them. They don't want any part of it.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
My name is Jerry Divis. I live at 108 East 4th Street, I believe, in Wahoo. And I want to speak about first floor apartments. I think they're a great idea. Fabulous. I think the whole town should be allowed to have first floor apartments. I don't know why you restrict them. We do have an elderly community, and I think that first floor housing downtown would be excellent for people. I don't understand the restriction, why there is one. In fact, I think the Fifth Street one should be first floor apartments also, because, you know, we need it. I think that that's the biggest need. The only thing I can say about the project is it's just, it needs to fit the property better and to fit Wahoo better than it does. And I'll talk about that once we're talking about parking. And my experiences with the city of Wahoo and asking for parking. I think you guys are making real light of your planning commission and that hearing, those hearings. That was 2.5 hours of hearings. Trust me, it wasn't just a sewer issue on why they made those decisions. And if I was a planning commissioner, I'd be upset with you guys. Because that stuff should be read into your records. And like I said, it was a long meeting, so I think you should kind of pay attention to that. That's all I have to say right now, but I support Mike 100% on first floor apartments. I think if he wants them on Fifth Street, you should let him have them on Fifth Street also, because I think there's a bigger need for first floor apartments than there is commercial space. So, thank you.
Next speaker? Anybody else want to speak on ground floor?
I just have a question. How many living units is it supposed to be?
So as proposed, this is kind of the max size of the project. It'd be 69 dwelling units. First floor dwelling units would be on Beach Street. The proposed project has commercial retail on Fifth Street on the first floor only. And then floor 2, floor 3 on Fifth Street will be apartments. And then Beach Street is a 4-story building, all 4 stories being apartments.
And then what are you projecting?
Can you come forward so we can hear, please?
Sorry. I missed the first meeting, so I wanted to come to this one. I'm Angie Kraft. And I'm a business owner here in Wahoo. So my question was basically, how many units, which you answered that, and what do you project the rental cost to be on those?
Yeah, so it would be 69 units total, it'd be 95 bedrooms.
Okay.
Cadence of studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. The rent really ranges, and I don't have that dialed in right now because I'm still in a show right now, but
Okay.
it will be market rate rents.
Okay, alrighty, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Next presenter.
Tracy Fligler, 1543 North Linden, and on the Planning Commission. I think that we did have enough information on the recommendation that we made at Planning Commission, given the fact that we were simply discussing whether or not to allow the apartments on the first level. The project can go forward minus that. Like if it's commercial on the first level of both buildings, we wouldn't be here. The issue is residential apartments on the ground level. That is what we voted not to recommend. I think we did listen to the public that day. We took everything into consideration. We've been going through this process for months. We listened to Teresa Klein talk about the need for commercial space in downtown. We talked about the last kind of space for opportunity for commercial downtown in that area. When we get to the parking, that's another issue. But I think that we did have enough to recommend, to make our recommendation, which was to not recommend allowing residential on the first floor of the second building. I think that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. Okay, seeing none, we're not going to totally close the hearing, but now we will move to the second public hearing, which deals with the parking and counting the stalls within the city right-of-way for part of the parking for his project. So now we will take comments on that part of it, parking.
Hi, my name is Carrie Vasha, and I live at 325 East 4th Street. I waited for both because I think they tie in together. Piggybacking off what this lady from the commission said, Teresa did say she has a lot of inquisition about retail in downtown. What's existing, people do not want to, they don't want to renovate it. They don't want to put the cost in to renovate it. They have multiple calls every week for small businesses downtown. I think we're doing an injustice if we're putting ground floor apartments on both. If we're saying, hey, this is for development, this is for downtown, I don't know why we're allowing ground floor apartments. I personally also don't like the idea of the parking double towards the senior center. No offense to seniors, but I've seen them try and back out of there. It's a disaster. Not only that, there's the food bank truck that comes in, and that street backs up all the way down to the next intersection, trying to get food through the parking lot over at the senior center. That's gonna be a disaster. Secondly, I've been trying for, gosh, I've lived there almost 4 years now, a little over 4 years. I keep getting told traffic studies don't indicate that we need stop signs at that intersection. I don't know if anybody of you live over there. They fly through that intersection. I've been flipped the bird, I've been honked at. Nobody utilizes that as a four-way stop. We're talking about putting diagonal parking on the side of the park and the side of the apartments. Would it be great that kids can run across the street to the park? Sure, but they're now running out in between parked cars on a street where nobody stops. It's a hazard already. We're gonna put more cars on each corner. We're adding blind intersections without stop signs. I think it's a terrible idea as far as adding so many parking. Also, if we can get the first floor taken out, I think that gives Mike a little bit more leeway to play with his parking stalls inside of the apartment area as well. Not only that, my question as a homeowner on that side of things is snow removal is a disaster. We pile it up in the middle of the street. So if you have parking on both sides of 4th Street, both sides of Beach Street, and we're putting a gigantic snow pile in the middle of both streets, how is anybody getting out of there? How's traffic coming through? What does that look like? Are we thinking into that? Right? I just don't think that space is feasible. I think this is a great project. I think if we can lessen the amount of apartments and put business on both sides, that would be great. It would be a great compromise. I mean, if we have to compromise, I think that would be it. That's all.
Next speaker, presenter.
Jerry Divis, I warned you, I told you I was coming back when I still live at the same address, so I don't need to write it in there again. Again, we keep hearing that if he had storefronts on the main floor, he wouldn't have to be in front of us. He still is gonna have to meet a parking requirement, no matter what. So if he had storefronts on the main floor with as many as apartments, he'd still have to be in front of you to utilize city parking, correct? Based on how many bedrooms
Based on
are there?
numbers.
Yeah. And did I understand that there's 96 bedrooms total?
Yeah, correct, 95 bedrooms,
Would-
so we need one stall per bedroom.
Per bedroom, which means 95 stalls, understandably. As a person that tried to build a fourplex a few years back across from our eightplex, we were told that no way that the city would allow on-street the same exact parking that he's asking for here. And we would have to move that parking onto our project. As Mike, if he would have had to put all that parking on his project, those buildings would be tiny little buildings, you know.
So this design is pushing things onto.
No, let's take in front of, the diagonal ones you have on, toward the park.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So this is not part of
No.
our project? Yeah.
But you were gonna do diagonal, right, you're, right. And you wanna you wanna utilize some of that parking. See, that's still
Yeah, so
on-street parking.
Yeah, this doesn't fit the number, we're at 68 here, so we need to ask for a couple along
Right.
these two streets.
But if you had to put the parking onto the property.
This is
Can I
the street.
approach that thing?
And I can pull up Google Maps. So this is the street here.
Yeah, let's work on Beach Street. If this parking here that he's asking for a couple spots for had to be placed onto the property, like I was required to do, that would push that building more into the middle of that property,
Correct.
which lessens his parking, ability. So all I'm saying is, as somebody that's tried to do the same thing, and I happen to live here, and can't do it, or couldn't, why are we even thinking about allowing that? Again, great project, lessen the amount of bedrooms to meet whatever he has as far as parking on the property.
Well, we've had questions in the past about downtown parking, and we did something that probably forefathers a few years ago wouldn't have thought of, and now we're allowing parking over on Broadway in city stalls with permit.
Right,
Maple, excuse me.
right,
Maple.
right. Okay, so,
Some things do change.
well, no, I understand that. I understand that, but it seems to be when it's more from somebody coming from somewhere else. But anyway, again, the project's a great project. It just needs to have enough stalls on the property. And then, the real interesting thing, and I know nobody cares because Hank owns the property, but I got aerial photo at 11 o'clock in the morning, okay, on a Tuesday. Not a big business day anywhere, that shows 20 cars parked on Hank's property. You know, he's just been a nice guy for everybody to park there. Most of those cars were from the banks along Fifth Street, across from Ace Hardware or whatever, Simon's Home Store. Most of those people are from the businesses right there in the Four Corners, if we want to call that. It's going to be interesting if Mike does his project, and I hope he does, and I hope the parking's within his area. Where's everybody going to park? And I know that's not Mike's problem, and it's not Hank's problem. But these are the staple businesses that have been here forever. And I'd hate to see that those guys have stress because you're gonna just allow something to, come in and be too big for the area, as it is. I hope that Mike does the project. I hope he does it within the means of the city without having to have any planning commission hearings or your hearings, but it needs to be scaled down to the amount of parking stalls that are inside there. I don't see anything in that property for garbage, because, I know how many an eightplex uses of garbage, and then I've seen when Hank has piled snow in the middle of that thing, take about 10 spaces out of his parking lot one year. You guys had one almost as tall as my building. Personally, I'm gonna lose 6 spots that are Hank's, that we've used, and Hank's been great to allow us to use along the north side of our building where we have entrances into that building. So there is a personal interest, but if he can make this project work within the parking lot and the stalls, that'd be awesome. So, thank you. If you guys would like to see those aerial photos, I can sure give it to you. They're right here.
Question. Come forward.
All right, I'm coming back. Angie Kraft. We own the 3 businesses in town. We have the back room, Sassafras Galleria, and then my husband has Comtech Global. The parking for business owners and customers is non-existent on Fifth Street on most days. When the back room is rented, that takes even more. Then we have the problem of Dollar General trucks taking up our spaces. Then we have the problem of livestock trailers and trucks that park parallel in the spaces to go to the bar or go to Dollar General. Parking is a huge, and I will tell you, I think this project is great. I do the festivals in town. Yes, it's gonna be hard because there's a lot of people that come to town to those festivals, but this would bring more. That's added parking with the festivals. So you gotta look at that, because right now I'm not going anywhere, and I don't think my festivals are either. So, yes, it'll be inconvenient to me because Hank and them have been nice enough to let me use the Wahoo Super parking lot, but we'll work that out with the city. I think it's a great project. I think it's good that there are some commercial spaces on the ground floor. I think that the project should be scaled back a little Because I think if you look at 95 bedrooms, that's a lot of bedrooms to supply parking to when our business is downtown hurt for parking now. I mean, there is basically nowhere for us to go or our customers. So that's my point. I do think it's a great idea. I'd love to see this come to town, but I think it just needs to be scaled back some.
Anybody else?
I think I have a question. John Scaff, live at 1254 Molly Boulevard. The plans as you presented them, you're gonna come up with a total of 117 spaces. But these aren't new spaces, are they? Some of these are already established.
Yeah.
How many spaces do you need for your retail?
So this is not counting, to be clear, this is not counting any spaces on Fifth Street. Fifth Street is not included in this count at all. So, for the full 5 bays of retail, Fifth Street will cover what's needed.
So, I'm sorry, say that again.
So
You're gonna have 5 bays.
we have
How many,
5
how many
spaces.
retail space, parking spaces do you need for that?
There is no requirement in C1 for commercial.
There isn't,
And the
okay.
parking is
Okay.
adjacent to the property.
But you're saying that you're coming up with 117 new spaces, of which 109 of those are gonna be for your apartments and stuff. You know as well as I do that they're gonna park on the south side of 4th Street and take up those stalls that would normally be for the senior center.
Currently, there are
They
no
don't
stalls
exist.
there. There's
The
no,
what?
there's no stalls there.
These don't exist today.
On the,
No, he's saying.
on the south side of 4th Street, in front of the senior center,
Okay.
there's diagonal parking.
I
On
missed
4th
that.
Street. Not on the north side, the south side. But you wanna put them on the north side also, correct?
Yeah.
You know as well as I do, they're gonna take up spaces for the senior center. And my other question is, what are you gonna do with your existing merchants? Where are they gonna park? They're gonna take up a little bit of Fifth Street, but they already do that. What about all the people that are parking, the merchants and customers that are parking on both sides of 4th Street, or Linden Street? And then you have additional parking on Fifth Street. I don't see any accommodations for existing people to park.
So to answer that a little bit, I don't have a full solution. Like this project does not
I understand.
solve all
Parking is an
parking
issue
at
all the time.
But currently, today, there's 11 parallel parking stalls right here. And we're gonna create more by doing diagonals. You're
That's,
right, those will
is that
go.
Birch Street? Or
This is Beach
Beach Street, I'm sorry.
Smith Park is right here.
Okay,
These are just my ideas that I would recommend to the city.
Okay.
I'm trying to work with the city and the community to
so you could add a
figure
few
out
of those,
holistic
okay.
solutions. Yeah. So this is what I would recommend. Not that it'll happen, but it'd be cool if it did. This is what I would do if we were able to build two buildings. I would add these as diagonal. This right now is the back of Wahoo Supers. It's all green space. I'd add those, and those would become public spaces. So this street here, 4th Street and Beach Street, are public spaces. I don't have ownership of them at all. I would pay money to build them, and then they would be public spaces. I'm just asking to have a couple of them included in the count so I can build the max project that I'm presenting.
Well, I'm not sure the numbers don't add up in my head at all, but I am also very concerned about the local merchants and the customers we currently have. And we're already struggling with parking in the downtown area. That's a big concern. And for those of you that don't know, I was on the planning commission for about 10 years, and we discussed parking multiple times. And anytime you vary from that just a little bit, when you start using city parking for a particular project, you run into all kinds of unforeseen problems. So we just, as long as I was on the commission, we just chose not to do that because it created too many problems. So, thank you.
I will say, Skip, it's not ready yet, but the city is looking at other areas right east and in that area east of this development to put in more parking. Now, it would be another half a block further east than where it is now. But there is space that diagonal parking could be placed further east on Fifth.
On Fifth Street. Okay.
Yeah, and we're looking
But
at
you're
that.
still asking customers and merchants to walk a lot farther. And
Well, we hope that the business people would be parking down there and the customers can
leave the
use.
customers up front.
That's a theory.
Good luck with that theory. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
I just want a clarification. Mike, you said there's 96 bedrooms? 95, okay, sorry. And how many places are on site? 54, 58?
So on site today, as a grocery store, there's 58 stalls.
Okay,
Estimated, there's 11 parallel stalls on Beach Street, on the west side of Beach Street. There's no lines, so.
no, I understand.
So that-
Let's
so
leave
that's
Beach,
total.
let's leave Beach Street out of it, because I would like to see your project be able to be housed within your own parking stall, your own parking place. How many stalls would you have on the property that you're purchasing? Not any city property, just your property.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
with the
two
building.
proposed buildings, it's 68 stalls.
There's still 68 stalls.
Correct, with two buildings.
And you need 95.
Correct.
So you're not just asking for a couple, because that's a big number between
But I'm
those two.
supplying 111 total. So I'm gonna build 111 stalls.
Well, you're gonna paint the lines different.
No, I'm not. I'm gonna dig out into the grass, dig out into the streets, make all the, what is it?
But it's still on this, it's still,
19 on 4th Street and 24 on Beach Street.
still on the city right away, though. It's not on your property, it's the city right away, correct? So you're asking for, I'm not gonna do real quick math, but approximately 25, thank you, stalls, so not just a couple, we're talking 25, thank you.
Henry Weiss again. Mike, I was gonna ask you on the back side of our store, where you talked about that green space, you wanted to take that out and put in diagonal parking there today, correct?
Yeah, that's my proposal, yeah.
Right now, it's just rock and grass,
It's zero parking.
trash can.
Yeah.
So you could put your parking, that'd be within that land. So how many stalls was that?
That'd be 19 more.
That'd be 19 more where, on top of the 68 that you say you'd had inside already.
Yeah, right here.
Okay.
That's your city.
No, that's not, that's mine. That's gravel and grass right now.
Do you have enough room
Yes.
to put stalls?
We park there now, don't we, Stuart? Yeah.
That's still city right away that you're parking.
Yeah, it's city right away.
No, it's my
There's,
land.
there's 25 feet at least before your building sits right on the property line.
No,
Yes.
the side of it does. Between me and that curb,
No properties in Wahoo goes to a curb,
right,
because the city has right of way. They can widen streets, they can do whatever they want. That's city of Wahoo's right of way
okay.
that you're talking about. Even though it's green space, you mowed it.
And I've mowed it and paid
It's still
taxes.
there. I mow the city of Wahoo's
Yeah.
green space too, but, just to be clear, that it's.
All right,
not on your
thanks,
property.
Jerry. But that's where those parking stalls would go in my mind, okay.
Yeah, correct.
Thanks.
Marcia Wagner, 411 East Fourth. I just want to say that I live on, Fourth and Elm, and I do want you guys to take a better look at Beach Street. It is so busy now. They closed Elm Street in between the park and the pool. They closed that. So that's one road down. I mean, you've got County at the end of the yard, then they closed that road. And then Beach Street is busier now than it ever was. St. Wenceslas closed the road. So now you have to go, the Civic Center is a one-way. So people and now our buses, our St. Wenceslas buses, they drop off on Beach. All the buses go to Beach. They no longer go through the parking lot. We've got everything closed off down there, and Beach Street is kids, 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 kids. And it's crossing, and driving past the senior center, and more parking spaces across the street for them. And hopefully they can walk, Mike, from their apartments. And then putting all those parking spaces. That's something that I think should be looked at beforehand, before you're approving parking spaces. Like, can't you put that thing on the road to see how many cars are going down? It's crazy busy now. So that's all I wanted to say. Who took the thing? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next one, get in line.
Okay.
Greg Hull, 251 East 17th Street. Last time I was up here, I was trying to save a tree in front of our bank. But anyway, no surprise, Wahoo City Bank, we're a fan of development. We think development raises your community. Over the years, we've seen projects that have been developed that have led to growth, increase in property values, increase in prosperity for our town. We think this is a great opportunity to develop a project, our property that could become blighted. We miss Wahoo Super, Hank, but could become blighted or underutilized. So you look at some towns like Elkhorn's downtown, Gretna's downtown, Bennington's downtown. They don't have a downtown. We have a unique downtown that's really vibrant, and we can't take it for granted that it'll always be vibrant. Our bank was founded in 1932 by my great-grandfather, John Hull, and we remodeled the bank. We're celebrating our 90th anniversary, a little plug, but we remodeled the bank in 1967 and expanded. 1989, we remodeled and expanded as well. In the 80s, if a lot of us old-timers remember, we had a recession, a depression almost. We had empty buildings. Downtown had cracked sidewalks. It was in a bad state. Well, a couple things happened. People stepped forward. We remodeled our bank, but we also redid the sidewalks. You think that was a little thing. Sidewalks is a little thing, but all of a sudden, building owners everywhere, almost throughout the whole downtown, put awnings, refurbished their building facades. It was kind of like a renaissance. Downtown really took off. The economy improved, of course, but it wasn't by accident. It happened because we invested in our downtown. Parking's always been a problem. Our employees, we walk a block, so we've decided to free up spots in front of our bank so that customers can park. Well, business owners park in front of our bank, but all our employees, we walk a block, so we feel like we're trying to contribute. I think your parking plan is creative. I think it addresses the issues with parking. I would charge the council, keep working on this parking issue, but we need to keep growing and developing, improving our town. This is a great opportunity, so we would be in favor of it. So, thank you.
Next. Anyone else want to speak? Troy?
Troy Johnston, 249 Continental Estates, Wahoo. I guess I would just like to state as a resident of Wahoo, lifelong resident, to keep in mind whatever decision, I'm certainly for development. I think this looks like a great project. I don't know a lot about it. I would just remind the council, think about what other implications this may have in other parts of downtown. Is this truly a one-time deal, or does it have ripple effects down the road? As there are certainly other areas of downtown that could be utilized, I believe, in this fashion, although I have not done my homework, but just sitting here listening to comments, are we opening up a bigger can of worms than just located at 5th and Beach? So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Erin Longnecker, 1820 Paul Avenue. As a new business owner here in town, I'm fully supportive of the project. I think parking is always going to be a problem no matter where you're at. Downtown Omaha, downtown Lincoln, parking's a problem. If people want to go downtown, they're going to walk a little bit for parking, right? There's plenty of parking, you know, over by Scooters where we're at right now. On the other side of the Saunders County Lost Pets, hardly gets used all day long. There's a whole street there that nobody parks on during the day. So I think there is quite a bit of parking over there that if people really need more parking, there's places for them to park. It might actually be good for business for them not to park right in front of the business that they're going to, right? Maybe they'll walk by another boutique and stop in that they wouldn't have before. So I think, you know, parking's always gonna be a problem. Using the right-of-way for parking seems like a great idea to me. We have a ton of right-of-way in front of our store, right? Using that for parking could have also helped. So I think it's a great idea. I think he's trying to help the community grow. Change is hard for everybody. We've gotten lots of great feedback from Scooters that it really helped brighten up the corner, and I think this will do the same thing. So I'm fully in support of the project, and I think it'll be a great thing for the town.
Would you sign in, please? Thank you. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say, I think this is a great project, and I know I have ties to it as far as, you know, being the mother of the son. But it also addresses the issue of the parking, which I think the developer is working with the council and the city to address. As far as opening up a can of worms, I see this as catapulting Wahoo forward, that not only with this project, but then other projects that will come from this from other people, to help Wahoo grow and develop and keep their downtown vibrant. And that's the heart of the community. So, that's all.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I don't live in Wahoo anymore. Is that okay if I still?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeff Fritz, I used to live here in Wahoo. And I think the biggest issue is this parking thing, and I've read a lot of different things about urban development and whatnot, but in regards to what he's proposing in terms of, you know, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, correct? A lot of those are gonna be maybe young couples, singles, you know, moving to town. Okay, they're gonna have a job either maybe downtown or maybe outside of town. They're gonna be leaving during the day, correct? They will be leaving, there will be open parking spots, the ones that are on the street that everyone's arguing about. And then at evening, they will come home when most of the people that are working that need parking lots or customers will not be there. That's something I think that needs to be addressed. Everybody's worried about, oh, well, all these stalls will get used up all the time, and that's not really gonna be the case. And I mean, from what I've read, that's usually, it's where do you find the flow of when people are gonna be there, when they're not gonna be there. And I mean, based on the demographics of the apartments, I don't think that's gonna be a real big problem. So it seems that there's a lot of argument over things that don't really need that much argument. Yeah, maybe he's asking for X amount of spaces, but in reality, nobody's really gonna notice that much of a difference based on times of use. And that I don't think anybody's brought that up. So that's my point for the day, so.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we've completed both public hearings. Remind you that if we close both public hearings, the council will discuss. The council can ask anybody in the public if they want to for clarification of their position, but the public will not be coming to the podium after they're closed. So, with that, what's the desire for closing the first public hearing, number 3 on the residential apartments?
Motion to close.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to close the hearing on the residential apartments on the first or ground floor. Any discussion? Roll call on the motion to close.
Creachy?
Yes.
Grapple?
Yes.
Warford?
Yes.
Nagel?
Yes.
Ideas?
Yes.
Booth? Yes.
Okay, now, we'll close the hearing number 4, which deals with the parking.
So moved. Second.
Okay?
What?
Closing.
Too fast for it.
Any questions? Roll call on closing on the second hearing.
Krejci.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Booth. Yes. Warford.
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Okay, council discussion. I guess you can ask questions of anybody. The developer.
I'm gonna start with the question of what we're talking about on number 3. We're talking about ground floor apartments. You're talking about 5 apartments. Am I? Or is it all 10?
It'd be the
You can't
entire
have,
first
you can't
floor.
have the back half either.
Yeah,
That's what I was
the
gonna ask.
entire
There's no
first
way
floor.
that, you couldn't section that off and just have the front section be small commercial bays or something like that, and then apartments behind them on the ground floor with access from the rear.
No,
That's not
because,
cool.
yeah, we have a strict prohibition without a conditional use permit for any first floor apartments, doesn't matter which direction it faces. And that'd be true of all the downtown commercial buildings, regardless of which direction they face, they're not supposed to have, living spaces in the first floor.
And we've already said there is no residential that will ever face Fifth Street.
Correct.
That has to be.
Yeah, there's a prohibition. This, if you recall, we passed an ordinance not very long ago that allowed for this as a conditional use permit, but only as it pertains to adjoining a residentially zoned area, like the park.
Yeah, I was just looking trying to get a count of what the difference was. I thought, man, if it's just 5, I feel like that's something that could be easily fixed, but I can see in your total plan out of 69, if you're talking about 7 more on the back, 6 more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I count 7. Well, maybe I'm counting that one
Yeah, the
twice. That's a
difficulty
two-bedroom.
of trying to assess
It
the
wouldn't work that
impact.
way. I just didn't.
Yeah, as the one anecdotal comment I would make is the difficulty in assessing the impact of first floor commercial versus first floor residential is we don't require any parking stalls for first floor commercial. So there will be an impact, there will be a need to parking that technically speaking, if he puts first floor commercial, he doesn't have to do anything to address.
So that was my next question.
Yeah.
If those were all commercial bays across the bottom, the parking requirement goes away as well, because I was gonna say, we have all kinds of, do you still have that requirement then for the upper floors?
For the upper floors,
Okay,
yes.
that was my
Still
next
the
question, because I
total
know
needs
that we
to
have
be
some people
80
who aren't
parking
providing any
stalls.
parking
Yeah.
for upper level apartments right now.
Yeah, this
I
is
don't
a
know if
new
that's-
construction
okay.
requirement.
Okay, thank you.
With the ground floor apartments, is there going to be a restriction? Are you gonna reserve those for more elderly?
So if it's able to go through, I would like to do the first floor as ADA units. So maybe not all of them, but a good majority of them.
Well, and to refresh my memory, I mean, we have talked, I think, planning commission has talked about this, we did the zoning change. Can you bring me up to speed? I mean, we went through the zoning change, planning commission, I think, recommended not. We voted for the zoning change to allow first floor apartments. Am I recalling correctly?
I think we ended up with, and Tracy, you can correct me from, we ended up with a resolution, a solution to it where it's in ground floor apartments would only be allowed by conditional use permit in those locations where there is residential adjacent
Yes.
and facing, right? So Smith Park is zoned residential. The Civic Center block is zoned residential.
Right.
So with those, with that requirement, it really pushed any residential ground floor on the outskirts of our existing downtown.
And to your point, Stu, what procedurally happened is there was a recommendation against it. Came back to the council says, we want to approve something, went back to the planning commission, and this was modified. Technically, they didn't vote the second time because the recommendation was against the first time.
Okay.
But obviously, they participated in ultimately the ordinance that was changed.
Now, forgive me, they participated in the ordinance, but did this specific application run back through them as an application? This has never
Yeah.
been through plans?
No, this has been.
Okay, 'cause I was looking at it at the bottom, saw Dave hearing was blank, approved was blank on our paperwork, so I was trying to find that. Okay, by.
This is at the last
What
time.
count?
Was it 7-2, I believe, or?
One person was absent, one person.
Abstained. It was
5-4 or
4-3.
6-3.
4-3 against?
Against a recommendation for denial.
On ground floor apartments, and then Separate, separate voting on the parking.
Right.
Same thing with the
Right.
parking is to say, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we got those.
Like, if I'm looking at, it right, you're looking at, if it were residential, you required, what, 15 stalls on that first floor of that?
Yes.
That's what's
Correct.
attributed to that.
On Beach Street.
Yeah, versus it would be 0 if it was commercial.
Are we just speaking to the first floor
Yeah.
at this
Yeah,
point? Okay.
just discussion on the first floor.
I guess I'm not seeing a big issue with that first floor that would be residential facing the park, unless I'm missing, some points. I know it's been talked and talked and talked, and we've had issues, but to that argument, I'm not seeing a big reason to have a concern.
Less development downtown because you're taking away 5 more potential commercial bays for restaurants or shops completely away. And we have limited spots downtown open as it is, and if we allow apartments, we're giving up potential for 5 commercial units to be built.
I guess I don't see it as 5 commercial units, I see that as this many square feet. Because right now, there's nothing there, we're not taking anything away, right? We're taking away space that could eventually, maybe someday, have something else built in it, as opposed to a project that's in front of us to do something.
Yeah.
So from my part of it, when it comes to the ground floor apartments, as far as conditions set, we're always gonna be, well, it's gotta meet parking. So my parking or my issues with this definitely don't lean toward ground floor apartments. When we're talking about number 3 ground floor apartments, I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with meeting parking, so.
And I think that was the public sentiment, and I know planning commission had that conversation as too, is that by allowing ground floor apartments, it compounds the parking
Compounds the
issue.
parking issue. And my whole thing was, I don't mind the ground floor apartments as long as it can meet parking, and it seems it's compounding it, making it worse. Now, I will say, when I first saw this, I was thinking, in all honesty, that you were trying to count all of down Linden and all of 15th Street, and that clearly doesn't work. So what he's doing is adding spaces that don't exist today.
He's adding 32 total stalls
Right, yep.
on those 2 sides.
Same thing. While the requirement from what he has that there are right now to what he needs, that's in excess of that. So
You'd be
there's some level
adding
I
5
understand
stalls
that, but
downtown on street parking.
yeah.
When it's all said and done.
I get into a lot more of that when it comes to parking, but for my part, we're just talking about ground floor apartments. I don't have a problem with that.
Right, yeah, I got a bigger problem with parking.
What's the council's desire?
I would introduce an ordinance to approve the downtown conditional use permit for residential. And I would not wanna waive any 3 readings. I want this to go forward though.
I think we're doing it backwards, honestly. I think we should do the parking first, but we can't because it's the order.
You said that would complicate the parking.
The issue in front of us is the downtown residential.
That's why I'm saying we got them backwards. It should be the parking first, then the ground units.
Yeah.
I would second Stuart. I would be willing to pass that on a first reading,
Right.
as we continue to work through the rest, so.
Okay. We have a
Second.
motion to introduce the motion, the ordinance, and we have a second. Any other discussion? I will not ask for a waive unless somebody brings it up. Okay, roll call on the motion to approve first floor, ground apartments. Roll call.
Creachy?
Yes.
Warford?
Yes.
Ideas?
Yes.
Rappel?
Yes.
Nagel?
No.
Booth?
Yes.
Okay, first reading passes 5-1.
Why do we have a planning commission if we don't listen to them?
Okay. Now, we move on to discussion on the parking.
I'm gonna have a hard time using the right of way. I'm gonna,
Can't park
I'm
on the
gonna
street
start with the
anywhere.
simple, let's start with the first one. We don't allow overnight parking on any of our downtown parking, and if this becomes public downtown parking, we don't allow overnight parking on downtown. So do we change that?
We've
The
got
the law that we adopted says we can have overnight parking with a tag in designated locations.
Okay, so these would be
These,
permitted parking.
and we've had this conversation, these, at least from the way that we've discussed it, Beach Street and Fourth Street would be designated overnight parking locations that would require a permit. Or any that we would count those towards that designated overnight parking.
So his residents would have to
D27.
get a permit from the city in
Right.
order to utilize
Right.
those spaces.
And that was what we discussed when we talked about Maple, was that it would make logical sense if, we even used beach as an example at the time, saying that that would cover the other end of downtown, so.
well, we
No.
asked for beach and we ended up with Maple because snow removal was considered a big issue. Or Broadway, excuse me, Broadway was asked for.
Right.
Broadway,
Yes,
At North
yes.
Street.
Yep.
So we still have the same issues.
There's also no business located adjacent to those parking stalls on Maple Street, where if a car was left for a period of time longer than just overnight, you would not have that interfering with any parking for customers in front of a business.
But we were gonna set timing on it anyway, and said, okay, by 7 in the morning or something, you gotta get out of there. To me,
You gotta park there for a week.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, you discussed beach, but you knew there was gonna be infrastructure work needing to happen on beach, so that's why it kind
That's
of
what it was.
delayed
That's right.
this side of the project. Because there was a discussion about both ends of downtown, but this one, since there's more street, more infrastructure to be done, you didn't act on that side of town. That's my recollection.
Yep. that is
I
correct.
actually have it, if you want to
Yeah.
read it, I have the ordinance that we adopted.
okay.
So we're saying that these would be permitted overnight parking by permit only. So what about the rest of downtown residents? Would they be able to park in these as permitted spaces as well?
Yes.
And so what happens when this two-bedroom apartment has 3 or 4 cars that
They
live
only
within
get two,
that?
they only get one.
Because I understand that we only calculate according to this,
Yeah.
but I'm saying at some point we have to have permitting rules, and they're gonna have to put that car somewhere.
Well,
And
that-
they're not permitted to be within this lot, and they're not, because I'm sure at that point you would probably, I don't know this, but I've got to assume you're assigning each apartment maybe one in and one out or something to that effect, right? To make it work. Well, if I've only got one in, one out, and I've got more than one parking or more than one stall or overnight guests, what are we doing with the rest of that? Because we just haven't provided adequate parking for all. That's where my concern comes in. I love the idea that we're adding additional stalls, so I don't think we're taking anything away from existing parking and existing businesses. It might be some walking because they don't get to use a parking lot, but again, that's not necessarily their issue, that's ours. But that means that the city is gaining additional parking on the outside, which is great, if it can be used.
Yeah,
But I'm
you're-
more concerned about where do we come in with overnight guests or things when the
Overnight
inside lot is
guests
full.
can get
Yeah.
a one-night permit.
They wouldn't be able, the problem is, if we did nothing, if these weren't constructed, there'd be nowhere for them to go,
Right,
right? And that's the dilemma, because they can't park anywhere else overnight unless they got a permit to walk from Maple to there. And
right.
to your point, if your perception is, well, yeah, it's a 1-to-1, but in reality, you think it's a 2-to-1 or something like that, then the city's gotta be cognizant of having
Right,
quite a bit more.
I understand that we say it's 1-to-1, I get that, but
Yeah.
we all know that realistically, we're gonna end up with more than that, and I'm just trying to figure out, what we're trying to not do is make a giant mess, where suddenly, we've got everybody parked in spaces that they're not allowed to be in, all the commercial bays are up here, or somebody's parked over in front of Simon's, and I just don't wanna see that become an issue, because we didn't have adequate parking to get people off the streets to begin with, and they don't know the difference. Because again, we don't always follow the rules, and so we're just gonna run into a problem where we've created this situation by packing 80 additional residents or 80 additional units, which means 100 and change residents into the downtown area without finding someplace to put their cars. Because the realism is, we're not downtown Omaha, they're not riding around on scooters. People in Wahoo will drive, and they have to have someplace to put that. And if this is where they live, where are they gonna put it when we're onto the street and we're over what we think we might need? It's gotta go somewhere.
And there's no place on that property to put snow, like they said, there's a mountain of snow in there. Unless it's being hauled off, otherwise he's taking up more of his stalls inside of his property.
Right, the city, as they plow Beach Street, is gonna end up putting that,
No, I'm talking about on
Sure,
his,
again.
he could lose 7 stalls with the 2-inch snowstorm.
Sure.
And
the
those
private
residents
property,
have to find a place to park.
Yeah, and again, that's where it's up to him on how to clear that, but I'm thinking, same thing though, Beach Street isn't super wide, so realistically, we would almost have to start cutting in and putting that parking over on the other side of the street, because we have to find a way to widen that to get the snow away from the curb where typically it's always gone in. And that's a problem 5 times a year, but it's a problem you can't ignore.
So there's 68 units on site of parking.
Parking stalls on site.
Parking stalls on site. So
And
if your project had to fit that, could you do it? Should you trim down your bedrooms to make that fit? I realize you have to have cash flow. To me, the density is, I'm struggling with the density. And the point has been made several times, the use of the right of way. I'm not sure I wanna go there at this time. It's not like we're talking about 8 units or 10 parking stalls. We're talking about Beach Street and 4th Street. That's a lot of units to be using.
With the ground floor
Forgive me, Mike,
apartments,
because
it's
between the letter
27
that you sent
stalls
in and
in
everything like that, I see different numbers every time I look down, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm still doing my math right. Right now, the city is, there's 15 stalls that run along 5th Street.
Correct.
We're not even gonna talk about Linden because those aren't being changed at all, right?
Not talking about
So
Fifth
those
Street either.
15 exist. You're adding 32 as you go down here, and you have how many on site?
So today, with the grocery store, there's 58.
Okay,
We
and there would
will
be
adding-
68?
Yeah, we'll be adding 10 more, maybe 60.
So 68. So you're 27, so realistically, even if we were just talking about 1-to-1, what you're adding for city parking is 5 stalls.
He's got
5 extra. Yeah.
5 of them. Counting everything down,
Yep.
that's
I mean,
that's everything being full. We're talking about, we're getting, the city gets 5 stalls out of this, but gives up that right of way
And then
to essentially private
Yeah, I
parking.
had that one. I
Right.
see the
But-
others now.
But then
I mean, is
he's
that,
estimating.
Which would be.
I'm not trying to phrase it that way, but that's how I feel like the return, we're giving up the right of way and all of our citizens parking by the time we permit that out, we're basically giving that up for the benefit of what would be 5 stalls, and I'm gonna assume those 5 stalls get taken up. If you can get your, these apartments are full, 95 units, I'm gonna assume there are more than 95
A lot of those singles are gonna be a couple.
I just wanna, this Beach Street
Mhm.
and 4th Street, right, if this came in and it was commercial development facing these, we would have to install this parking, right?
Correct. That has to be done no matter what.
Right.
Correct.
Just
So
whether it's on
the
city
use
side
of the
or-
right of way is not really the issue for
Well,
parking.
it is to be, because if we're talking about that being commercial space and the city is putting it in, then that's all commercial space. The city's providing those parking stalls to those commercial spaces. We're talking about providing them to private residences instead of being public commercial space.
And the
Because
question.
if they're permitted, they're gonna be full, and then what happens again if they're full, because there's an event, the back room has an event, or there's an event at the park, and all these people are coming home from work, and it's 6 o'clock at night, and there was a big event at the park, and all of those spaces that were supposed to be designated city spaces are full, where these guys are supposed to park, and now where do they go? So they're gonna go park somewhere and move their car later? I guess that would be the expectation. I don't know, that's what I'm
I
asking.
think
I'm
Melissa's
asking
point
where
being
we're
that you
going with
probably
that.
need to construct that, you probably have to have that as overnight permitted parking, no matter what. The question being the number though, right? You give him no usage of that towards his requirement and make him cut it down 27, do you give him X number of credits, or do you give him the full credit, right? I mean, there's 3 options there basically. Nothing, full credit, something in between. And that's really the question before you.
The zoning, the zoning, the way it is written says it should be a percentage. So if you, based on his proposal of 69 units with 95 bedrooms requiring 95 stalls, the percentage that he's asking for to be counted on off-street is 28%.
Thank you. That's probably what I thought it was.
27, isn't it?
Well, the west side of Beach Street, if we cut out and not use, and let somebody have parking in there, we're not taking away from the width of the Beach Street. We're using the right-of-way for parking. What else would that right-of-way be used for?
Well, and again, as I'm looking at the number, I forget that that's 24 up there, not 13, so there is more parking
Yeah,
that would
but-
ideally be available than I was thinking it was.
But we have never allowed that to be counted before.
Guessing never, just never downtown.
No.
You know, so
I
that's,
don't
that's my
think
point.
Jerry's,
We've heard it
unit is
several
downtown.
times, the unintended consequences. So, you know,
Was
if
your
you
unit
didn't
downtown?
have a parking issue, we could be looking at a 9-story building. You know, where does the
No, you couldn't.
density have to fit into
You
this?
couldn't because the height restriction is 45 feet.
Because we're at
right
maximum
now.
height right now.
Yes.
You know, but the density is where I'm coming from. That is a lot of units in a very small space.
Oh, I love it. I love the idea of having a bunch of people downtown, I just don't know where to put all their vehicles. And I don't know, again, I don't know that the off-street parking solves it because it becomes an overflow problem as well. If those spaces were straight up, if they weren't city property, and we're saying this is where their people are gonna park, and if they have any more, residences or people that need to park overnight, they gotta come down to the Maple area down here or whatever, and they're parking somewhere else, I probably wouldn't take issue with it. But I'm more concerned there will be overflow, there will be, you know, those are public spaces, they will be used by other people. And so it's not, I don't feel like it fits in the box of like, hey, just like it does, it's this parking lot, right? The parking lot, those are yours, they know they're theirs. But when you come to street parking, and there's sometimes theirs and there's sometimes not, and some people are gonna, I feel like that's gonna cause a mess. I just don't think it would be very long before we're all kicking ourselves and saying, when are we putting in a parking garage because we've created a huge problem down here now? Where people feel there's already a problem.
Right.
I guess I don't share the same sentiment. I feel like there's a residential parking problem downtown right now. I don't see the business problem, because when I come down here, I guess I expect if I have to park somewhere and walk 2 or 3 blocks, that's what a downtown area is, so that never bothered me. I've never not been able to park, unless it's the county fair or something like that that took up a bunch of spots. But, yes, you might have to walk a little bit, but I feel like we're stepping into a place where that may not be the case, that even walking is gonna get you there.
Would you consider utilizing the green space south of the warehouse? I call it the onion plant,
That's green space.
for
On Fifth.
open parking or permitted parking.
As in
Not
that
sure
right
how
away
to
area,
do that.
I mean,
I don't even have my
like,
phone on me.
to cut in
Just
stalls
north
there,
of, north of Smith Park.
parallel stalls? Or, I'm sorry, angle?
North of Smith Park.
On the north side of
The
Fifth.
north side of Fifth,
Fifth, across the street from the park.
south of the warehouse building.
Oh, okay.
That's right away. What else is it gonna
Those
be?
are all
Those are
projects that should be looked at. But is that fair to tie this project to that?
But it,
Are we gonna have to pay to put it
as
in so they can
one
use
comment
it?
that was made, different people are gonna park there at different times of the day.
Mhm.
So I think it's utilizing that area twice, and maybe that's better than beach.
I guess I don't mind the beach. Again, I was more concerned about using city parking for residences that are gonna be there overnight. And what effect that's going to have on the rest of business downtown as it overflows into those other areas. I mean, I would love to see all these people down here going to these businesses and, going to the wheelhouse or, spending the evenings out, and I love the idea. I just concern myself with that flux of what happens when things aren't exactly, you guys are all, the employees and business owners and customers are all leaving at 5 o'clock so that our residences can come home at 5 o'clock and just exchange stalls. That would be lovely, but it's not going to work.
It's not gonna be a perfect world.
Right, that's not going to work.
Doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
There's Saturdays and Sundays.
I was gonna say, I think Monday through Friday, just when you know, leave, when I leave the bank at 5:30 or 6, it's pretty open, you know?
Right.
That it probably is gonna work most days. I would say the one concern I kinda have with the parking, I'm not necessarily opposed. I like the idea of designating additional parking for permits downtown in probably that area, cause that area makes sense. But I also know that if I'm a tenant and I either have to pull straight into a parking spot in the inside parking lot, or I have a permit that also would allow me to park in an angle stall outside, I'm probably gonna choose the angle stall, cause it's easy, you know, or it's
If you
maybe
got a
more
pickup,
convenient.
yeah,
So,
big pickup.
so you wonder if those stalls will almost be as high a demand as the interior stalls. I don't know how you could, I mean, regulate that or.
By permit, I mean.
The only issue
you're only gonna have
that
some-
number that
Is
you
that a
have,
separate- I mean,
they don't have that problem permit.
Essentially, everybody would need a permit that lives there, cause if theoretically 68 people get home before 30 that didn't have a permit, well, they need a permit, you know, so you're pretty much gonna have to have everybody there with a.
Pretty much everybody gets one spot on the inside except for one person.
Yeah, because they're not assigned.
Right.
Well, they could be assigned,
If you're signing, then like, once again, you're taking away the public parking and the public.
No, I'm talking about on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
He's got 69 units, 68 stalls, so one person doesn't get a park on the inside
They'll have-
and a
yeah.
guaranteed parking spot.
You'll have to have a sign parking.
They would be looking on the outside for a spot.
So, again, I guess this is, I'm gonna go back to it, have you put thought into that? If there's a big event that's going on at Smith Park, and people have decided, because maybe the city hasn't put these other ones in yet, because that's not necessarily part of the project, and these spaces are all filled, where are people gonna go? They're just gonna park further away? Fair enough. And then move their vehicle for the overnight, because the overnight is still a thing, right?
It's certainly overnight.
The overnight thing, that's what we do.
I'm gonna ask
The
Tracy
issue
for her comments. She's on the planning and zoning.
Yes, and as planning commissioner, I just want to point out too that these are not engineered designs, they're just conceptual designs, and so what if you can't get that many on premise? What happens then? What
Travis
happens
will
if
reject
everything is all engineered and you have all your places for everything, and you can't get what you're saying, how does that affect?
That's where Travis
Travis
comes in and
would
reviews
reject
and
it.
wouldn't issue the permit. If he can't comply with the regulations that were laid out here, or that are already spelled out in zoning, then he can't issue the permit.
I mean, when we first talked with zoning, we said there was a parking problem. When we voted on the zoning change, we said there was a parking problem. Tonight, we're saying there's a parking problem. I still think we have a parking problem, so.
Are
I
we
don't know.
creating more of a parking problem
I think so.
authorizing this? If the city creates more true public parking?
I think the city needs to anyway.
I agree.
Why should that be hooked to this project? That should be separate. We should be looking at additional parking anyway. Why should that be used to benefit a particular project at all?
I don't know that it has to be tied together.
We kinda are though. I mean, we're saying we're gonna add parking and we're gonna make permitted parking so this project can work. And I appreciate the investment, I appreciate the energy, I wish this project can go through. It's a big project in a small spot. That's what I see.
Yeah.
So if this could be scaled down so that it does fit, Mr. Sullivan doesn't even have to be here. You know, the parking fits. That's my point. I think the city should be looking at additional parking, irrelevant of what happens to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, when we passed the ordinance that said ground floor apartments to begin with, my whole thing that I said was, I wouldn't mind that, I wouldn't mind seeing that. I wouldn't mind where they, as long as we don't have a parking issue, or as long as they solve the parking problem. And I feel like instead of solving the parking problem, we've exacerbated it in this situation. So while I still love the idea, I mean, I don't know that I love it, but I don't mind the ground floor apartments. Personally, I don't know, I don't feel like I can support using public space for that parking in this situation. I wanna see this go through, I wanna find a way to make it work.
Tracy?
You give it 15 units, then we only need 12.
Purpose of the permitting
history of the parking, but I believe, if I recall correctly, this provision requiring the city council to approve a percentage was added when the Chestnut Street was rezoned to be C1. And we did not want to have diagonal parking requested along Chestnut Street or in that area.
I guess I'd just like to say, I'm trying to maximize the potential of the area. I'm trying to come up with creative solutions of parking and of living. I haven't heard of many other, outside the permit usage, what I think is a good idea, and I think that should be executed if well designed. If you talk to other people around town, I don't hear a lot of other parking solutions that I'm aware of. This property is large. It's on an iconic corner of downtown Wahoo, and people assume it should hold all the parking that it can because it has for the last 4 years. I think that mentality needs to be helped and resolved. And I'm trying to come up with creative solutions to do that, and I'm open to other creative solutions as well. I'm not saying this is the only solution, but it's one that adds more stalls than I've ever seen. So take this as this is the max project I would like to do in Wahoo, and I would like to stick to that. But if there are things that can be improved and added and executed, because I'll actually execute it, I'm open to those conversations as well. So I'm not here just to sit on anything. I'm here to do something, and I want to improve the community through parking, through housing, and through this development. So yeah, good ideas that I can execute. I'm listening to them and writing notes down. But please give advice on what you recommend, not just parking sucks. Because I know it sucks. So just give some ideas, please. Just have results for what departments you can have. That's the solution.
Without utilizing on-street parking.
Well, and there's a lot of land. There's a lot of land there maybe to be innovative and not just diagonal, maybe come in and, there's so many ways you can park and provide parking that I've seen in many other places. So it doesn't all have to be diagonal.
We need to bring this back to the table.
And I think the operative question for tonight is, and partially because I'm getting tired over here, but is are you in a position to reject it, accept it, or table it, right? I mean, I certainly, I don't think you're gonna make a decision tonight. The question is, do you want to approve the notion of allowing for some portion of on-street parking to be counted towards this, or are you completely against it and want to stop it? Or do you want to table it and have further conversations about some other solutions?
I would make a motion to deny. Deny the conditional use of parking. My point being is that if we table whatever, by a denial, we are forced to sit down with Mr. Sullivan and come up with some plans. And I do think Beach Street needs to be looked at. I think the city should probably be improving that, should put some stop signs on it maybe, but that is not part of this project. That would be separate. If he can fit his project into his footprint, great, but he can't with what's in front of us. So that's why I'm voting to deny.
I agree with Stuart, I'll second his motion.
Okay. Motion to deny the proposal on the parking.
And denial, of course, isn't passage of an ordinance, so it doesn't require a waiver, so you can just have a straight vote on it.
Yeah. And we have a second. Any other discussion?
And it's majority, not supermajority.
Roll call.
Creachy,
Yes.
Rappel,
Yes.
Ideas,
No.
Nagel,
Yes.
Warford,
Yes.
Boo. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And with that being said, I still want to work with Mr. Sullivan.
I wanted to table. I didn't deny it. I wanted to keep.
I didn't want a table hanging over our head. I mean, I want to be clear where
It'd be
we're
sitting there
at.
for who knows how many months so we can.
But I still want to work with Mr. Sullivan.
So,
Yes.
if you're halfway looking at, if things were different, you'd probably be in favor of, we come up with a different solution. Can you, we'd have to kind of start all over, but can you give us your bare amount of apartments that you can cash flow and
So,
reduce?
again, I'm an apartment person. I want to focus on apartments. The more important thing for me is to do apartments on the first floor. If that goes all the way through, that opens up opportunity to decrease the building. Because if I can max out apartments on the first floor on one building, I can cover my vacancy loss of potential commercial space. That'll allow me to shrink apartments. So apartments carry the vacancy loss of commercial buildings, which is, that's how it goes. So I know that going into this project, if I can apartments on the first floor, I can allow less of a building to be built that will require less parking stalls to be installed. So read between the lines as you will, but you know, I would, my main focus is getting apartments on the first floor. Those 11 units will help decrease the building size and keep parking more likely on the property.
We have to come back to planning and zoning first.
Thank you.
He could come back there.
So that math is
if he
just
comes up with
ad
a
hoc.
different plan.
Yeah. Right. Back to him.
Okay.
Yeah, so where we stand right now is there's no conditional use permit for additional parking. You passed the first reading of ground floor apartments. It doesn't have to go back to the planning commission. It will be on the next council agenda for second reading, and if you want to waive the third reading at that point on ground level apartments to keep the project moving, you could do that at that time.
Perfect.
Okay.
I need to step away.
Okay, old and tabled business, none, action items not requiring public hearing, approval of second reading and proposal waiver of third reading for ordinance 2396 to provide for a conditional use permit for the expansion of Wahoo Locker at 157 West Fifth.
So Travis asked me to relay this information on to you, and he has spoken with Charlie about this. When Charlie came in to request permission to build the additional building that he's talking about, it was really relayed to Travis as a dry storage and cold storage, which leads to the expansion of the existing locker, and as this building would be subsidiary to the existing uses that are already in the building. As we learned more about this project and Charlie elaborated on his plans, it really is a true standalone retail location and could be considered for what they're discussing using it, with their office in the front, a restroom in the front, a counter, where they're gonna be using it to fill their orders that come in, their deer, or they're making their gift baskets and boxes. And under those conditions, understanding how he's gonna be using it, it could be permitted exactly as he presents it with no conditional use permit. Am I explaining that
Yeah,
correctly,
you're correct.
Jovan?
One thing you may remember the first time this came up, I posed as a concern is that, does the applicant understand that we're approving a conditional use permit for an expansion? Meaning you can never sell that other building as a standalone building with that conditional use permit because it's tied to the larger building, right? And that was my concern, I guess, initially. And so if this is not an expansion and it's itself a retail space, then it's a standalone, it doesn't need a conditional use permit, it can be approved as such. We still have, as a city, the question of if trailers are coming through Maple Street right away, this and that, the city, as it does in any street, can come in and say, no, you can't do that, right? And so obviously the applicant is still gonna have to work with the city to be a good neighbor and a good steward to the city and make sure everybody's on the same page on things, just like anybody else that's bringing trucks and trailers into downtown to load and unload. But that's all administrative. That doesn't involve you.
So we don't need this anymore.
You don't need it, in my opinion.
So the other issue there was a lot of discussion on was the actual use of that Maple Street right-of-way, and would there be enough room for a trail to be in that location as well as a potential street? And I did have that information reviewed by JEO, and I didn't bring the drawing, but yes, there is room for that. It might be a narrower street or a wide alley or potentially one-way, but there would be enough room to put a drivable surface for safe travel in that, in conjunction with a trail and having the necessary buffers that would be needed between the two, and all of the utilities that are located in that area.
And the trail would be on the west side.
West side, yes.
Okay. So if I'm understanding, as we tried to point out earlier, since they are doing things at this point that already meet code, we have no action. to take
Yeah,
on
it's
this.
all administrative. As long as they meet the requirements for retail space, they don't need any approvals from you.
Okay. Charlie, do you want to make any comments?
Should have told you that 2 hours ago, huh?
Well, thanks for everything, guys, but part of that problem was my lack of telling you guys what I was doing. We're telling Melissa, Travis, everybody. Sometimes I get it in my head what I'm doing, but I don't convey it to you guys right, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So how do we,
It would just come off the agenda, no action taken. Applicant withdrew it from the agenda.
applicant withdrew because we don't have to do it?
Yeah.
Got that? Okay. Number 2, resolution 2022-19 to adopt the City of Wahoo 22-23 property tax levy.
So you did take action at the last meeting to adopt it. You did not have the resolution specifically in front of it, and I wanted to be clear because there's some question about whether or not this should be adopted or could have been adopted before our joint public hearing last night. So to eliminate any confusion going forward, I'm asking for you to approve this resolution. It's exactly what you approved at our last council meeting.
So moved. Second.
Okay, discussion? Roll call.
Creachy.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Booth. Yes. Warford.
Yes.
Grapple.
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Okay, number 3, action on the request for reasonable accommodation referred to the reviewing authority in August 23rd of 2022.
So if you recall, I apologize for this not being in your packet, but if you recall, we received a request for a reasonable accommodation to the City of Wahoo's animal licensing fees for delinquency. I reviewed the information and discussed it a bit with Jerry. There was no evidence presented by the applicant that meets the requirements of the acts. And so, therefore, I believe it is appropriate for there to be, there is no accommodation to supply because there is no disability or handicap that requirement was not met.
I missed that
So,
meeting, so I'll do whatever you
if
guys
you-
tell me.
Yeah, because
Basically
to
the
Melissa's
same.
point,
Yes, you guys
basically,
handle
the first hurdle, you have to show you have a qualifying disability, right? If you can't show you have a qualifying disability, we don't get into whether the accommodation is reasonable, whether there's an undue hardship to the city, none of that, because you had to show that you had a qualifying disability to start. There was no real evidence of any kind of qualifying or even alleged disability, and so it doesn't meet the first hurdle.
What she presented did not qualify.
Right, what she presented did not qualify, yes.
So you would make a motion to recommend denial.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Roll call.
Warford.
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Booth. Yes. Creachy.
Yes.
Grapple.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Okay, number 4, discussion and action on Chestnut Street Improvement Project.
So I would like to ask the council to consider going into closed session for the protection of public interest with regard to this. There's an item that has come up that I would like to discuss with you because whether it is resolved or it is of,
Continuing.
yeah, continuing, it is.
There's the potential for litigation there.
Yes,
So
there you go.
basically, that's one of the two common reasons is the potential for litigation, or we're dealing with a personnel matter, this falls into the scope of potential litigation. We ought to talk about it confidentially, so that'd be my recommendation.
Motion to move into closed session for recommendation.
And that would include,
Include
No, that's right.
Melissa, myself, anybody, is Ryan still here?
No,
No.
no, that's not necessary.
Okay.
Including them.
Including this, and you?
Okay.
Yeah,
Can you wanna,
yeah, I can.
It's up
hand
to
it-
you.
it's if
or do you wanna
sit-
finish up the meeting, Melissa?
I can.
She doesn't have to hang around?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
However,
That'll work.
okay.
okay,
I'll second Carl's motion.
okay, motion been made to go into closed session, roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Boo. Yes. Creachy.
Yeah.